dancing gets things to escalate rather quickly. I know it has become the official dance in America. That's when we know we achieve equality. Okay, but now we want to move, and I just want to say one thing before we move into the next subject. The topics that we were using, the topic about the grand strategy, right? How many of you feel like the muscles in your brain are like getting like working hard? How many of you feel the way that it's like meta, 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 detail, 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 detail,
Yeah.
meta, 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 right?
Yeah.
So I just want to say that let's just give ourselves a little patience, because sometimes this could become a pain, because it's like, well, is it meta, meta, 50 years? I mean, it's like, whoa. So sometimes it's good to take a deep breath. I know that we're in a process of developing it, right? And going, does this make sense? Agree? So give a high five to the person, tell them meta, meta, meta. I'm loading this. We're getting into all the front loading teams. Okay, so now we're going to talk about escalation. Can you say escalation with me?
Escalation!
Eso. Got that. Was it you? Very human. Okay, good. And another way to think about escalation is how do we create momentum? So I just want to say that we said that this thing is about three things. So it's active popular support. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was the second one?
Escalation.
What was the second one?
Escalation!
It's there. And what's the last one?
Absorption.
Absorption. We just barely are going to go to the second one. So now we're going to go into escalation and kind of give an overview. And then later, hopefully after that, we're going to talk about absorption, which I know a lot of people want to talk about. So we're going to do that, and then our hope is tomorrow we can reinforce those things.
But tomorrow we're going to do a lot of absorption.
A lot, like a lot of absorption. La aspiradora, like I call it. So just what creates momentum? For us, and actually if you go to your binders, page 93, thank you so much, Fatima. Page 93. Excellent. I see most of you are there. If you see page 93, here's a more detailed explanation through narrative of the cycle of momentum. Kind of just a little story to get you to understand this context between having an organization, which is a group of people, we call it a strong movement organization, right? That then is willing to escalate by doing nonviolent action for a popular demand. Is it getting more clear, the popular demand stuff? Right? If it's not popular, then it doesn't work. That's our assumption here, right? And then that generates, what does it generate after? Once you do the action, what do you get after? Popular support, right? And then our hope is that then we can absorb this to create a stronger movement organization. And then we do the cycle over and over and over again, eventually it becomes a whirlwind. Okay, so escalation. First of all, there's plenty of ways to escalate. Actually, Gene Sharp wrote a book, I don't know how many years ago at this point. I don't know, he's old, so maybe 52 million years ago. That he actually talks about 198 methods of nonviolent action. He actually puts it into 4 categories like non-cooperation, nonviolent disruption, nonviolent intervention, and so forth and so on. But we just put a couple here like the hunger strike, civil disobedience of the legitimate laws, rent withholding, and student strike. But he wrote a whole book. Actually, if you're ever like thinking like, I don't know what to do tactically, he wrote a whole book with all stories about this, about 198 different tactics. Like the, I forgot what's the name of the group of mothers in Argentina.
Oh, yeah.
Las Madres de la Plaza de Mayo, and their tactics, he tells the stories of them and multiple other movements. So I think it's a great kind of source for movement creativity. Plenty of ways to escalate. Now in this presentation, we want to make the distinction between 4 different types of actions. And the first one is small actions, right? And actually this is Teresa, which is part of United We Dream. And this is from our campaign in 2010. We keep referring to the same one because I think if we introduce more examples, we get more lost. But small actions, technically, are things that you can do with few people, 7, 10 people. In the Dream Movement, there were about maybe some of the coming outs, doing small rallies, doing small vigils, right? You can also do small actions that have a lot of high impact. Is that true or not? For example, our brother Kai, do other people know Kai? Kai from 99 Rise? Some people do. Okay. Kai, recently, I don't know if you heard, there was a hearing in the Supreme Court around Citizens United, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That thing. Essentially corporations having more money to rule the world. And Kai was there by himself, and he stood up and he interrupted the session.
Wow.
And he was like the first, was he the first?
He was the first one to be videotaped,
Yeah.
which is kind of how you frame what is first. But,
In the history of this year.
and the history
How many YouTube hits did it get, his video?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think 500,000 in that.
One person. Got tons of attention. He went to jail and, then he got out and he's been going back to the city to deal with this. But it's a small action. So small actions can have high impact. I just want to make sure that makes sense. We're going to get into what makes them work in the later section of action, but I just want to make this difference between this four. So small actions, okay? Another one is called dilemma actions.
I'm sorry, can you go back to that?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay.
So it's small because it was just one person, it wasn't small because of the impact.
That's right,
That's right.
because of
Okay.
of a small group of people. Correct.
Well, small actions are a lot of different things. I think some of the most common ones are online petitions, picketing, what are, with a few people,
A small vigil.
heckling, mic checking, candidates, door knocking, even that's a tactic, canvassing,
But you got the point. She's like,
Yeah, I was just confused by the example that you gave.
yes, but it's a small participation. There.
Oh wait, we forgot to clap.
Oh.
letter writing.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. If you want more tactics, talk to Paul, please. He certainly has a lot of small actions. Okay. The second one type is called dilemma actions. Now, how many of you already have heard of dilemma actions? Raise your hand. Okay, a lot of people here. So, has anybody heard of what we did at this dilemma action, the blood drives? Who has heard? Okay, not everybody. So we should just tell it. So, one time when we were in this campaign in Washington D.C., we were trying to figure out how can we tell more of a story, how can we capture the imagination of America, and we said most of the times the story around immigrants is that we take, right? That we don't give anything. So we did the service campaign, a lot of different tactics, but one of them was about giving blood. And the funny thing about this blood driving thing is that when the media came and asked some of us about what were you doing donating blood, some of us told the media that we wanted the public or the politicians to tell us if they will take our illegal blood. And the funny thing is that the reason why it's a dilemma, so this is how the picture, so I just want you to see, first of all, the picture of us. This is one from Harvard. We look like American heroes. I just want to put that out. You know what I'm saying? But first of all, the concept of illegal blood is just completely absurd, right? We're using it, of course we don't like to be called that, but we're using it for the sake of, for creating a reaction to polarize. So, this is what it came out in the paper. I'll just read it to you. It says, on Friday, a group of illegal immigrant college students, or dreamers as they call themselves, donated blood at Harvard University and other colleges. The students said they wanted to show the rest of the country that they are ready to perform community service and are good citizens even if they don't have U.S. citizenship. As someone who's undocumented, I'm not scared about giving blood, said Megha Sharma, 22, whose family came to Massachusetts from India 7 years ago and who donated blood Friday for the first time. I'm scared about the vote in Congress. Okay, now, this is why it's a dilemma. If you take our illegal blood, are you with us or against us? What is it? If America or the politician says, I want their blood, it's very juicy and has a lot of iron, would they take our blood, would they be supportive or would they be against us? Supportive, right? But if they're against us and they say, we don't want that, are they against just us or are they against everybody?
People who need blood, yeah.
So the reason why it's a dilemma, and I know many of you already know this, is because either choice they make, they lose, and either choice we win. So this is what John Kerry said. John Kerry said, the students are reminding everybody what it really means to be American. Oh my God, he's so sweet. Then he says, only 3 in 100 Americans will ever donate blood despite the need. But these kids are living out of the real full measure of citizenship, he said. They're living, breathing testimony of the importance of passing the dream. Isn't he so sweet? All right, great. Of course we're American heroes. Right? Okay. Then this is the other thing of the opposition. And the opposition says a bunch of stupid things, right? But Marie Parente, a former Massachusetts state rep who opposed efforts to give the state's illegal immigrants in state tuition, said the blood donation drive did little to change her opinion that the Dream Act was wrong. She compared illegal immigrants donating blood to win sympathy with serial killers donating blood to get off death row. What if a guy on death row says, I'll give you a pint of blood for the rest of my life just to get me out of here, separate 82 me for his basis. Now, I just want to say that this, I don't want to compare to the people that are in the prison system or are going through unjust sentences of death, but they just say racist stuff, is this making sense? And that alienates the opposition. So that is one type of dilemma action. We also have a little video about a dilemma action that maybe you would like to see. Let's see if this goes. We have a problem with this one. Okay, wait. Paul, agárrate esto aquí.
No, you can move that.
That's what they want to do.
Oh, right,
Sí se puede. Paul, just move your video a little closer. Oh, yes.
Just move the laptop closer.
Okay. Perfect. You're good, you stay there. You stay there. Stay strong. Stay strong. You good? Okay. Great job, great job. Let's put this a little forward. Thank you so much. I'm loving the participation.
You can get on a chair.
It's okay, it's for like 2 minutes.
Fear is together with apathy, the biggest enemy of social movement and the biggest ally of the regime. Humor is important to lower fear. Lowering fear is important to increase participation. We go into the street, we put like a big barrel in the middle of the street. And it's Milosevic's picture is on the barrel. And there is a texting money for Milosevic's retirement. Please insert the coin. And there was a baseball bat next to the barrel. And it said, if because of Milosevic's economic policies you don't have a coin, bang the barrel. After 15 minutes, there were 100 people around the barrel banging, bam, bam, bam. And the police shows up. What's going on here? Whose barrel is this? Oh, we don't know. After some time, they take the barrel, put it in the car, and take it away. We take the cameras, snap, snap, snap. Police arrested the barrel. This is the dilemma. Actually, they don't touch the barrel. More people are coming and banging it. If they take it away, they look silly. There is no way out. Regret whatever you do. So this is the dilemma action. It's great. It's funny. You're having a good laugh. And what is more important, you are destroying the loyalty of, in this case, of the police force. The police force doesn't think that you are right. Doesn't necessarily need to like the movement. But what this action creates is that they stop trusting in the wisdom of their leadership. Because the regime that puts them in the situation where they have to arrest Barrel, something is wrong here.
That's our buddy Ivan. You like dilemma actions?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You like them too. They're hard to come up with, but we'll figure it out.
Wait, so it's a catch-22, it's like a lose-lose situation for the opposition?
Pretty much, my brother. And a win-win situation for you. I have had, I don't want to say the word dream because we say it like for everything, but I had had dreams about this action of the blood drive. Because I always thought, what would happen if immigration would have come to the blood drive and arrested people? And I imagine the amount of polarization that we have gotten if that would have happened. So much that I keep thinking that we should like take over hospitals wanting to donate blood. And get people rejected, and that should be some sort of large country sitting. So, I don't know, dilemma actions are awesome. So, we'll talk more. Okay, dilemma actions, we're good? High five to the person left, tell them dilemma actions.
For all of us.
So, the distinction we want to make is that, so we have a small actions, trigger events, and moments of the whirlwind. And Paul's going to talk a little bit about those. I also want to say that you can do dilemmas in all those three. Are you following me on that? But that is necessarily that you can actually generate, that you don't have to, but you can. It depends how you craft. There's a whole quote-unquote art about doing dilemma actions. And we're not going to get to do them this week because we don't think, it just takes longer time to develop. So Paul, do you want to talk about trigger events and moments of the whirlwind?
Yes. In this framework, when you made that list, when you did the polarization graph, okay, all the events that really move public opinion at a large scale, we would call those trigger events. And the guy who defined that was this guy named Bill Moyer, who's in your packet and whatever. And what it means is basically actions that are big enough to actually generate, noticeable shifts in public opinion. when you have enough trigger events, and a lot of times when you have a trigger event that's designed right, it can be replicated, or it creates so much momentum that there's multiple trigger events that happen and sometimes explode and go viral, that turns into a moment of the whirlwind. That's the distinction. Okay? So Occupy had a couple trigger events in it, but it turned into a moment of the whirlwind. Like Seattle had a couple trigger events in it. It had the day of them shutting down the WTO and tear gas being fled. Those were trigger events. They happened, and that turned into a moment of the whirlwind. And why this is different is we're trying to get you to think about actions within the metrics that we're talking about. What creates good polarization and what creates momentum? And when you listed out those things were trigger events. And we're going to talk a little about what are patterns that we see about the movement creating trigger events. Trigger events are sometimes events that you can't control that are created through conditions, but if you're paying attention to them, a lot of times you can capitalize on them. And that's a different framework than institutional, instrumental demands, or a lot of times the structured tradition doesn't think that way because they don't have the metrics and they're not thinking around the idea that we're actually trying to. The movement, if it's going to win, has to create trigger events, and there's very few movements that don't have moments of the whirlwind. Okay. So these are a list of different movements and some trigger events and moments of the whirlwinds that happened in each movement. Okay. So in India, there was this massacre where there's this big protest. It's called what is it called again? I can't pronounce the.
Just a general went crazy in India.
Yes.
A general from the British Empire went crazy, and there was a demonstration of about 2,000 nonviolent protesters, and he just literally shot at everybody, kids and everything, and they generated this huge uproar in India.
This created a moment of the whirlwind like very few things in India ever did. There's actually a national holiday around this action in India. It's a huge moment in Indian history, and it was created through basically the movement created a huge protest. Birmingham is really interesting because they set up Birmingham with the idea of having multiple trigger events, and they wanted to escalate to a point of having the jails filled. That was the goal. And they knew that if they could get the jails filled, that it would create a crisis, a dilemma action, because what are they going to do with all the protesters if all the jails are filled? This is what happened. They started doing more repressive, violent stuff to create a moral crisis. It created this huge uproar, polarized the American public more in a week than the previous years in the 50s around civil rights. And what's really unique about Birmingham is that it became the model. And some people in the civil rights, some strategists call it the Birmingham model. They got together and they devised that. Selma used the Birmingham model, Chicago used the Birmingham model, and basically they created a model of doing multiple trigger events and hitting climax, and right after Birmingham was some of the largest civil disobedience in the United States history. There was a viral spread of civil rights, civil disobedience all across the country with around like over 10,000 people getting arrested in small actions all over the country. Bloody Sunday, this is the tipping or climactic point within the Selma. Well, actually, it's the first trigger event within Selma, in which basically they were trying to cross a bridge and they were beaten. Multiple people were beaten to the point of having to go to the hospital. And right after this, Martin Luther King called in church support from all over the country to do a follow-up march. And there was a martyr, a Unitarian minister was killed by white segregationists, I think literally a week after this event. And it created a huge wellspring of support that led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The March on Washington. After Birmingham, there was all that civil disobedience action, and then they wanted to leverage that into real legislative method. So it was one of the climactic moments that in history, a lot of times this is more focused on because it's more appropriate and stuff, but really a lot